Hello, Philadelphia Graveyard and History. Today we are at beautiful Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia, PA. And we are here to pay respects and honor Mary Morris' husband, Civil War nurse. Mary Morris' husband was born July 7th, 1826. She died on March 3rd, 1894, at the age of 67. And she is buried here in Laurel Hill Cemetery, Section Q, Lot 111, near the Civil War Soldiers' Home Monument. She served during the Civil War as a hospital nurse with the Army of the Potomac. Mary Morris' husband was known as the nurse with the apron of miracle pockets because of her deep, wide pockets carried games and reading material that entertained and filled the soldiers' long hours of recovery. Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Mary Morris was the granddaughter of Robert Morris, Revolutionary War fiancer and signer of the Declaration of Independence. She married a prominent and wealthy Philadelphia attorney, J.I. husband. Her husband, her two sons, and herself constituted her household at the beginning of the Civil War. Patriotic instincts were strong in the family, and the two sons enlisted in the Army at the beginning of the conflict, one of them leaving his medical studies to do so. She began nursing sick and wounded Civil War soldiers at age 41 with the Philadelphia Ladies' Aid Society, working in Philadelphia military hospitals. She was an admirable nurse and a skillful housewife and cook, and her first efforts for the sick and wounded soldiers of Philadelphia were directed to the preparation of suitable food for them and relief from the discomforts of sickness in a hospital. Most of her work was done at the hospital on 22nd and Wood Street in Philadelphia. Mary worked for 3 years in field hospitals and traveled on hospital transports to Harrison Landing, Baltimore, Antietam, Maryland, Fredericksburg, Virginia. She also traveled with the Army to Gettysburg in June of 1863, and a year later served in hospitals at Port Royal and at White House, Virginia. During and after the Battle of 7 Days on the peninsula in Virginia in 1862, when from the combined influence of marsh malaria, the heat and fatigue of constant fighting, and the depression of spirits incident to the unexpected retreat, more men fell with mortal sickness than were slain or wounded in the battles. One of Miss Husband's sons was among the sufferers from disease, and word was sent to her that he was at the point of death. She hastened to nurse him, and after a great struggle and frequent relapses, he rallied and began to recover. Every moment that could be spared from her sick boy was given to another suffering soldier there. As her son began to recover, Mary resolved to devote herself to the care of the sick and wounded of the army, and the Sanitary Commission assigned her to the position of Lady Superintendent of one of the hospital transports that bore the wounded and sick from Virginia to New York. She made 4 trips on these vessels, and her skillful nursing won her the hearty regard of all on board. While the troops were being transferred to Attaqua Creek and Alexandria, Miss Husband went to Washington, where Miss Dorothea Dix, superintendent of Union nurses, asked Mary to take charge temporarily of the Camden Street Hospital in Baltimore. After a few weeks' stay there, Mary went to Antietam, where the smoke of the great battle was just rolling off the heights of South Mountain. There at the Smoketown Hospital, where the wounded from French's and some other divisions were gathered, she found abundant employment. At the request of the surgeon in charge, she remained in charge 2 months. On her way home, she stopped for an hour or two at camps A and B in Frederick, Maryland, where a considerable number of convalescents from Antietam had been sent, and these, on discovering her, surrounded her ambulance and greeted her most heartily, seeming almost wild with joy at seeing their kind friend once more. After a brief stay in Philadelphia, during which she visited the hospitals most constantly, she hastened again to the front, and at Falmouth, Virginia, early in 1863. After that fearful and disastrous battle of Fredericksburg, she found ample employment for her active and energetic nature. As matron of Humphreys Division Hospital, 5th Corps, she was constantly engaged in ministering to the comfort of the wounded, and her solicitude for the welfare and prosperity of the men did not end with their discharge from the hospital. The infirmities or blunderings by which they too often lost their pay and were sometimes set down as deserters attracted her attention, and so far as possible she always procured the correction of these errors. Chancellorsville. In early May 1863, immediately after the Battle of Chancellorsville, Miss Husband went to United States Ford, but was not allowed to cross, and joined 2 Maine ladies at the hospital on the north side of the Rappahannock River, where they were dressing wounds until dark, slept in an ambulance, and early in the next morning went to work again, but were soon warned to leave, as it was supposed that the house used as a hospital would be shelled. They left, and about half a mile further on found the hospital of the 3rd and 11th Corps, where the surgeon in charge urged Miss Husband to remain and assist him, promising her transportation. She accordingly left her ambulance and dressed wounds till midnight. By this time, the Army was in full retreat and passing the hospital. The surgeon forgot his promise and left Mary to get away as best she could. It was pitch dark and the rain pouring in torrents. She was finally offered a part of the front seat of a medical wagon, and after riding 2 or 3 miles in the horrible roads, the tongue of the wagon broke, and she was compelled to sit in the drenching rain for 2 or 3 hours until the guide could bring up an ambulance, in which she reached Falmouth the next day. The hospital of which she was lady matron was broke up at the time of this battle, but she was immediately installed in the same position in the hospital of the 3rd Division of the 3rd Corps, then filled to overflowing with the Chancellorsville wounded. There she remained until compelled to move north with the Army by Lee's raid into Pennsylvania in June and July 1863. Gettysburg. On the July 3rd, the day of the last and fiercest of the Gettysburg battles, Miss Husband started for Gettysburg, determined to go to the aid and relief of the soldier boys, who she knew well needed her services. She reached the battlefield on the morning of the 4th in General Meade's mail wagon. She worked at the field hospital of the 3rd Corps until that was well as the other field hospitals were broken up, when she devoted herself to the wounded at Camp Letterman. Here Mary was attacked with spasmodic fever, remaining for 3 weeks ill in her tent. She was eventually carried home, and as soon as she was well, went to Camp Parole at Annapolis as agent of the Sanitary Commission to fill the place of Miss Clara Davis, who was prostrated by severe illness induced by her severe and continued labors. Defending the innocent. In the autumn of 1863, Miss Husband's attention was called to the injustice of a court-martial that had tried a private soldier for some alleged offense and sentenced him to be shot to death. She investigated the case and with some difficulty succeeded in procuring his pardon from President Lincoln. She began from this time to take interest in these cases of trial by summary court-martial, making a study of each one, and though she found that there were some cases in which the punishment was merited, the majority were deserving of clemency. She became their advocate with the patient and kind-hearted Lincoln. In scores of instances, she secured, not without much difficulty, the pardon or the commutation of punishment of those sentenced to death. Rarely, if ever, did the president turn a deaf ear to her pleadings. Every case she presented had been thoroughly and carefully examined and her knowledge of it was so complete that he felt he might safely trust her. Her persistence healed many injustices. This included her son Henry, who benefited from his mother's work when President Lincoln signed the order to free him and return him to duty in 1863. In December 1863, Mrs. Husband accepted the position of matron at her old hospital, 3rd Division of the 3rd Corps, then located at Brandy Station, where she remained until General Grant's order issued on the 15th of April 1864 caused the removal of all civilians from the Army, the Wilderness, and Spotsylvania. Not a month had elapsed before the terrible slaughter at the battles of Wilderness and Spotsylvania had made that part of Virginia a field of blood, and Mrs. Husband hastened to Fredericksburg, where she would remain until the 1st of June, and then moving on to Port Royal and White House, where the same sad scenes were repeated. At White House, she took charge of the low diet kitchen for the whole 6th Corps, to which her division had been transferred. The number of wounded was very large, this corps having suffered severely in the Battle of Cold Harbor, and her duties were arduous. But she made no complaint, her heart being at rest if she could only do something for her brave soldier boys. When the base was transferred to City Point, she made her way to the 3rd Division 6th Corps Hospital at the front, where she remained until the 6th Corps were ordered to the Shenandoah Valley, when she took charge of the low diet kitchen of the 2nd Corps Hospital at City Point and remained there until the end of the war. On May 6, 1865, Miss Husband was gratified by the sight of the gallant Union Army marching through Richmond. As they passed, hundreds of soldiers of the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th Corps rang out the loud and hearty, "Hurrah for Mother Husband." Mary felt that she must be doing something more for her boys before they separated and returned to their distant homes. She went to Philadelphia and gathered from her liberal friends and her own moderate means enough money to procure the necessary supplies. She returned to Virginia and met the soldiers of the Corps to which she had been attached at Bailey's Crossroads, and there spent 6 or 7 days distributing to them the clothes and other necessities she had brought. Her last opportunity of seeing them was a few days later at the Grand Review in Washington. After the war, through all these labors and toils, Miss Husband received no compensation from the government or from the Sanitary Commission. She entered the service as a volunteer. Her necessities were met from her own means, and she also gave freely to the soldiers and their families. Her reward was in the knowing that she had accomplished an amount of good that few could equal. All over the land, in hundreds of homes, in thousands of hearts, her name was a household word. And as the mother looks upon her son, the wife upon her husband, and the child upon its father, blessings were breathed forth upon her, through whose careful care and watchful nursing of these loved ones were spared. After the war, Mary lived in Florida with her husband and sons. In 1883, she worked in the pension office in Washington, D.C., and received a pension of $25 a month for her work during the war. On the grave marker inscription, although it is very difficult to read, Mary Morris Husband, wife of Joshua L. Husband, granddaughter of Robert Morris, signer of the Declaration of Independence, born July 7th, 1820, died March 8th, 1894. A volunteer nurse on the field, 1862 to 1866, Union Army. As you see, there is a GAR marker at the base of the grave and a wreath left by the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Thank you for your service, Mrs. Husband, and for all those who you took care of and nursed. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and have a great day.